The series name is What If Naruto Was in One Piece, so let's start the series. The last thing Sanji saw was Kuma's paw. Those massive, padded palms, impossibly soft looking for something that carried the weight of a warlord's power. They were reaching for him through the smoke and screaming steel of the thousand sunny, and Sanji knew, with the certainty of a man who had stared down death more times than he could count, that there was nowhere to run. Sanji! Nami's voice. Distant. Stretched thin by the wind and the chaos and the terrible finality of what was happening. He tried to turn toward her. Tried to offer some kind of smile, some reassurance that everything would be all right. That was his job, wasn't it? To suffer in silence while keeping the ladies safe? To absorb the blows and pretend they didn't hurt? But Kuma was faster. The paw made contact with his skull. There was no pain. That was the strangest part. Sanji had been hit before. Kicked, punched, stabbed, burned, frozen, electrocuted, sliced open by men with blades and men with devil fruits and men with nothing but hatred in their hearts. He knew what pain felt like. It was an old friend, an unwelcome companion that had walked beside him since the days of starvation on that rock with Seth. This was different. This felt like being pulled apart. Like every cell in his body was being stretched across an invisible horizon, torn from its moorings and scattered into a void that had no up or down, no beginning or end. He was aware of himself, his thoughts, his memories, his identity, but the vessel that carried those things was coming undone. Kuma's power, he thought dimly. Repelling me. Sending me somewhere. That's what he does. But this didn't feel like simple propulsion. This felt like annihilation. The darkness around him wasn't empty. It was crowded with things he couldn't see but could somehow feel, presences that brushed against his consciousness like fish swimming past a drowning man. He caught fragments of places that weren't places, sounds that weren't sounds, colors that had no names in any language he knew. And then there was nothing at all. When Sanji woke, the first thing he noticed was the cold. It seeped into his bones from the ground beneath him, a damp chill that spoke of water and shadow and places where the sun rarely touched. He tried to move, to push himself up onto his elbows and assess his surroundings, but his body refused to cooperate. Every muscle screamed. Every joint protested. He felt like he'd been folded into a box too small for his frame, and then unfolded again, wrong side out and backwards. The second thing he noticed was the dark. Not the dark of night, with its soft edges and promise of dawn. This was absolute. Complete. The kind of dark that pressed against his eyes like a physical weight. My eyes, he thought. He raised a trembling hand to his face. His fingers found his cheekbone, his brow, the socket where his left eye should be. Everything was where it belonged. No bandages. No wounds. No blood. But when he opened his eyes, when he forced them open, commanding them to do the one thing eyes were supposed to do, there was nothing. Just darkness. Unending, absolute darkness. No, he whispered. The sound of his own voice shocked him. It was hoarse, cracked, barely recognizable. How long had he been unconscious? How long had he been here, wherever here was? He tried again. Opened his eyes wider. Rubbed at them with the heels of his palms until he saw stars, thank God, stars, actual light exploding behind his lids, but when he stopped, when the pressure faded, the darkness returned. No, 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 no. Sanji wasn't a man who panicked easily. He'd learned to control his fear on that rock with Zeph, learned to push it down into a small, hard place where it couldn't touch him. But this was different. This was the one thing he'd never prepared for. He was blind. Time passed. Sanji had no way of measuring it. Minutes could have been hours. Hours could have been days. The darkness was absolute, unchanging, and it swallowed every attempt he made to track the passage of moments. He lay where he'd fallen, too injured to move, too terrified to sleep, too proud to cry, though God knew he wanted to. He thought about the crew. About Luffy, who would be searching for him. About Zoro, who would pretend not to care but would never stop looking. About Nami and Robin and Chopper and Frankie and Brook and all the others who had become his family, his reason for living, his proof that the world could be beautiful if you found the right people to share it with. They'll find me, he told himself. They always find me. But even as he thought it, he knew it wasn't true. This wasn't like the other times. This wasn't some island they'd sailed past, some adventure waiting to happen. This was something else entirely. He could feel it in the air. The quality of it was wrong. Too thin. Too sharp. It smelled of pine and earth and something else, something he couldn't name, a scent that reminded him of lightning storms and old temples and things that shouldn't exist. When his strength finally began to return, Sanji forced himself to move. He crawled. On his hands and knees, through mud and roots and sharp-edged stones that cut into his palms, he crawled. He had no destination in mind. No goal except to move, to prove to himself that he was still alive, still capable, still a man and not just a broken thing lying in the dark. His hands found a tree trunk. Thick. Rough-barked. He pulled himself upright, swaying on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else, and stood there breathing for a long moment. Left leg first, he told himself. Then right. One step at a time. He took a step. Then another. Then another. He walked for what felt like hours. The ground beneath his feet changed as he moved, from soft earth to harder packed soil, from forest floor to what felt like a path worn smooth by many feet. The air grew warmer, though not by much. He could hear water somewhere in the distance, a gentle rushing sound that spoke of rivers and streams. Civilization, he thought. There has to be civilization near water. He followed the sound. It was harder than he expected. Without his eyes, without any sense of where he was or what lay ahead, every step was a gamble. He tripped over roots he couldn't see. Walked into branches that scraped his face and tore at his suit, his beautiful black suit, ruined now, stained with mud and God knew what else. He fell more times than he could count, picked himself up more times than he wanted to remember, and kept moving. Because that's what you did. That's what Zeph taught him. You kept moving. You kept fighting. You kept living, even when living felt impossible. The river, if that's what it was, grew louder as he approached. Soon he could feel its presence in the air, the moisture against his skin, the cool breath of moving water. He followed it downstream, reasoning that settlements were more likely to be built along lower ground. His legs were shaking by the time he stopped. He'd found something. A structure of some kind based on the way the air changed around him, closer, more enclosed. Wood, he thought. Old wood, weathered by years of rain and sun. He reached out and found a wall, rough-planked and solid. A house. A shack. Something. He followed the wall until he found a corner, then another wall, then a door. Sanji knocked. Because that's what you did. You knocked. You didn't break down doors and demand entrance like some kind of animal. You knocked, and you waited, and you hoped that whoever was on the other side would have mercy on a stranger who had lost everything except the will to keep going. No answer. He knocked again. Still nothing. Sanji's hand found the latch. It lifted easily, too easily, really, for a door that should have been locked, and swung inward on hinges that creaked with age and disuse. He stepped inside. The darkness here was different. Deeper somehow. More complete. He stood in the entryway, breathing air that smelled of dust and old herbs and something else, something that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. You're hurt. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. Female. Low. Calm in a way that was somehow more terrifying than screaming would have been. Sanji spun toward where he thought it came from, his body dropping into a fighting stance despite his injuries, despite his blindness, despite everything. Who's there? His voice cracked. He hated that it cracked. Show yourself. A long pause. Then, closer now. You can't see. It wasn't a question. It was an observation. A diagnosis. No, Sanji admitted. Because what was the point of lying? I can't see. Footsteps. Soft. Deliberate. Coming toward him from his left. He turned to face them, tracking the sound as best he could. What happened to you? I don't know. The truth again. Strange how easy it was, when you had nothing left to hide. I was attacked. By a man with strange powers. He hit me, and when I woke up, I was here. Blind. Here. A hand touched his arm, gentle but firm. He flinched, couldn't help it, but didn't pull away. Sit down before you fall down. She guided him to what felt like a chair, rough-hewn but solid. He sank into it gratefully, his legs finally giving up the pretense that they could support him any longer. Thank you, he said. The woman didn't respond. He heard her moving around the room, opening containers, pouring liquid, doing things he couldn't see and couldn't identify. The silence stretched between them, heavy with questions either of them was asking. Where am I? Sanji finally said. The land of waves. The name meant nothing to him. Absolutely nothing. He'd never heard of any island or country called the land of waves. It wasn't on any map he'd studied, any log he'd read, any story he'd heard from the countless sailors who passed through the Bartai. Is that in the Grand Line? The what? Sanji's heart clenched. The Grand Line. The ocean that circles the world. Paradise, some people call it. Or the New World if you go far enough. Another pause. Longer this time. I don't know what you're talking about, the woman said. There's no Grand Line here. There's no paradise. There's only the 5 great nations, and the hidden villages, and the endless wars between them. Sanji's mind raced. Tried to make sense of her words. Failed. Then where? Drink this. Something pressed into his hands. A cup. Warm. He brought it to his lips and smelled herbs, bitter and sharp, with something underneath that might have been medicine. What is it? For the pain. For the shock. Drink. He drank. The liquid burned going down, but almost immediately he felt something loosen in his chest. The constant ache in his muscles faded to a dull throb. The terror that had been gnawing at the edges of his consciousness receded, just a little. Better? The woman asked. Yeah. He handed the cup back toward where he thought she was. Thanks. I'm Sanji, by the way. Just Sanji. A moment of hesitation. Then her fingers brushed his as she took the cup. Miko. She didn't ask any more questions that night. Instead, she helped him to a bed, a real bed, with blankets and a pillow and everything, and told him to sleep. He tried to protest, tried to explain that he needed to find his crew, needed to get back to the ship, needed to do something other than lie here helpless in the dark. But the medicine was strong, and his body was weak, and sleep pulled him under before he could finish the sentence. When he woke, the darkness was still there. He'd hoped, foolishly, desperately, that it would be gone. That his vision would have returned as mysteriously as it had vanished, that he'd open his eyes to sunlight and color and the familiar shapes of a world he understood. But no. Just darkness. He lay there for a long moment, breathing, taking stock. His body felt better, stronger, more coordinated, less like it belonged to someone who had nearly died. The bed beneath him was soft, the blankets warm, the air filled with the smell of cooking food. Food. Sanji's stomach growled. You're awake. Miko's voice. Closer than he expected. He turned his head toward it. Yeah. How long was I out? 2 days. A pause. You needed it. Your body was. I don't know how to describe it. It was like you'd been pulled apart and put back together wrong. Your chakra pathways were a mess. My what? Chakra pathways. The channels that carry energy through your body. She said it like it should be obvious. Like everyone knew what she was talking about. Sanji didn't. I don't know what that means, he admitted. Another pause. Longer than the others. When Miko spoke again, her voice was different, sharper, more focused, like a doctor who had just discovered something unexpected in a patient's chart. Roll up your sleeve. What? Your left sleeve. Roll it up. Sanji did as she asked, fumbling with the fabric in the darkness. When his forearm was bare, he felt her hands on his skin, cool, precise, probing. She was quiet for a long time. That's impossible, she finally whispered. What's impossible? Her hands moved up his arm, to his shoulder, his neck, his face. She pressed her fingers against his temples, against the hollows behind his ears, against points that made his head throb with unexpected pain. Your eyes, she said. Something's wrong with your eyes. Not damaged, wrong. Like they're not yours. Like they never were. Sanji shook his head, confused. They're my eyes. They've always been my eyes. No. Her voice was firm. Certain. No, they haven't. Your eyes are, they're closed. Sealed. Like they're waiting for something. And the energy around them, the chakra, it's not yours. What are you talking about? Miko was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was strange. Almost reverent. I think, she said slowly, that you have Uchiha blood. The word meant nothing to Sanji. Uchiha. It rolled off the tongue strangely, a collection of syllables that carried no meaning, no weight, no connection to anything he'd ever known. He said it aloud, tasting it, and felt only confusion. I don't know what that is. Miko made a sound, not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh. No. I don't suppose you would. Her weight shifted on the bed beside him, the ropes creaking under her. The Uchiha are one of the founding clans of Konohagakure. The village hidden in the leaves. They're powerful. Dangerous. blessed or cursed, with eyes that can see more than they should. Eyes? The Sharingan. She said it like a prayer. When an Uchiha experiences intense emotion, loss, trauma, love strong enough to break them, their eyes change. They gain the ability to see chakra, to predict movements, to copy techniques. The strongest Uchiha can unlock even greater powers. The Mangekyo. Abilities that border on magic. Sanji thought of Kuma. Of the pawpaw fruit and its impossible powers. Of devil fruits and their strange, inexplicable gifts. Like a devil fruit, he said. A what? Never mind. He shook his head, frustrated. Look, I don't know anything about Uchiha or Sharingan or whatever. I'm just a cook. I'm from the East Blue. I sail with a pirate crew. I don't belong here. But you're here anyway. Miko's voice was gentle, but there was steel beneath it. And whatever you were before, whatever world you came from, you're here now. In my world. With my clan's blood running through your veins. I don't. My father was Madara Uchiha. The name hit him like a physical blow. He didn't know why, he'd never heard it before, had no context for what it meant, but something in the way she said it, the weight she gave it, told him that this was important. That this was massive. Madara, he repeated. The founder of Konoha. The strongest Uchiha who ever lived. A man who fought gods and demons and never lost. Her voice cracked, just slightly. A man who was betrayed by everyone he loved and died alone, cursing the village he'd helped build. Sanji was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, you said was. Past tense. He's dead. Flat. Final. Has been for years. Decades, maybe. I don't know exactly when he died. I never knew him, not really. He left before I was born. Left my mother in a village on the border of the Land of Fire, pregnant and alone, with nothing but a name and a promise that he'd come back. But he didn't. No. A bitter laugh. He didn't. And by the time I was old enough to understand who my father was, he'd become a legend. A monster. The man who tried to destroy Konoha and nearly succeeded. The ghost that haunts every Uchiha's dreams. Sanji didn't know what to say. He'd met people with complicated parentage before. Luffy and his grandfather, Robin and her mother, Frankie and his mentor, but this was different. This was the weight of history pressing down on a single life. I'm sorry, he finally said. Don't be. He heard her stand, heard her footsteps cross the room. I didn't tell you this for sympathy. I told you because I think I can help you. Help me how? I can give you eyes. The words hung in the air between them. Sanji's heart stuttered. What? My father's eyes. Her voice was calm, matter-of-fact, like she was discussing the weather. When he died, truly died, not the fake death he used to escape Konoha, he left instructions with those who served him. His eyes were preserved, kept safe, waiting for someone worthy to inherit them. And you think that someone is me? I think you have Uchiha blood. Distant maybe. Thin. But real. He heard her moving closer again. I tested you while you slept. Traced your chakra pathways, your genetic markers. There's something there. Something that connects you to my clan. I don't know how, I don't know why, but it's there. Sanji thought about his parents. He barely remembered them, vague impressions of warmth and safety, a woman's smile, a man's strong hands. They died when he was young, before Zeph, before the Bartai, before any of it. He'd never known where they came from, what their names were, what blood ran in their veins. Can you be sure? No. Honest. Blunt. But I can be sure of this, without help, you'll never see again. Your eyes aren't damaged, they're sealed. Something in your journey here, something in the power that brought you across whatever barrier separates your world from mine, it triggered something in your blood. Activated something that was always there. But without the Sharingan, without eyes that can channel that power, you'll stay blind forever. The choice was simple, really. Stay blind, or accept the eyes of a dead man. Sanji had never been good at accepting help. He was the one who helped others, the cook who fed the hungry, the fighter who protected the weak, the gentleman who put the ladies first. Taking something for himself felt wrong. Felt like cheating. But he thought about Luffy. About the crew. About the promise he'd made to find the all-blue and cook fish from every ocean in the world. He couldn't do any of that blind. Do it. The ritual took 3 days to prepare. Miko spent those days gathering materials, herbs and salts and papers covered in symbols Sanji couldn't see but could feel, somehow, their presence pressing against his skin like heat from a fire. She explained the process to him in detail, walking him through each step, each risk, each possible complication. The eyes were preserved in a solution of chakra-infused fluids, kept in a sealed container hidden in a shrine her mother had built years ago. When she brought them out, Sanji could feel them, a presence in the room that hadn't been there before, a weight that made his skin crawl and his heart race. "They're awake," Miko murmured. "Even now, years after his death, they're awake. Waiting." "How is that possible?" "I don't know." Madara was different. Special. His eyes were the eternal Mangekyo, a form of Sharingan that doesn't degrade, doesn't lose power over time. They'd been waiting for someone to claim them. Sanji lay back on the bed she'd prepared. His body was clean, his hair tied back, his face bare of the cigarette he usually kept between his lips. Miko had been firm about that. No smoke, no toxins, nothing that might interfere with the connection. "This is going to hurt," she warned him. "Figured. Not like anything you've felt before. The eyes won't just replace yours, they'll bond with you. Merge with your chakra, your blood, your very soul. If it works, you'll become something new. Something that's never existed before. If it fails..." "I know." He'd heard the risks. Rejection. Death. Worse things she wouldn't name. Do it anyway. A pause. Then her hands on his face, cool and sure. "Close your eyes." He did. The darkness deepened. Became absolute. And then the pain began. It started as pressure. A building behind his eyes, in his skull, like something growing, expanding, pushing against the limits of what his body could contain. Sanji gritted his teeth and wrote it out, breathing the way Zeph had taught him during those long days on the rock, slow and steady, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Then the pressure became heat. Not the heat of fire or sun, but something deeper. Something that came from inside, from the very core of him, spreading through his veins like molten metal. He could feel it in his eyes, burning, consuming, changing, and he wanted to scream, wanted to move, wanted to do anything other than lie here and let this happen. "Stay still." Miko's voice, distant and calm. "It's working. Stay still." He stayed still. The heat built and built and built until he was certain he would burn alive, until he could smell something burning, his hair? His skin, and then, just when he thought he couldn't take any more, it stopped. Everything stopped. The pain. The heat. The pressure. Everything. For one endless moment, there was nothing at all. And then... red. Sanji opened his eyes. The world was crimson. Everything he looked at was bathed in shades of red, deep and rich and somehow alive, pulsing with colors he'd never seen before, colors that shouldn't exist. The room around him was small and simple, wooden walls and a dirt floor, but he could see every grain in the wood, every crack in the floor, every dust mote floating in the air. He could see Miko. She was beautiful, he realized. Not in the way of the women he usually pursued, the Namis and Robins of the world, with their curves and confidence, but in a quieter way. Dark hair pulled back from a strong face. Eyes that held centuries of pain in their depths. A mouth that had forgotten how to smile. "Sanji?" She was watching him carefully, her expression unreadable. "Can you see me?" He tried to speak. His voice came out rough, broken. "Yeah." He swallowed. Tried again. "Yeah, I can see you." Something flickered in her eyes. Relief? Wonder? He couldn't tell. "The Sharingan," she breathed. "It worked. It actually worked." Sanji sat up slowly, testing his body. He felt different. Lighter somehow, and heavier at the same time. More aware. More present. When he looked at his own hands, he could see something moving around them, a faint glow, like heat rising from pavement on a summer day. "Chakra," Miko said, following his gaze. "You're seeing chakra. It's one of the Sharingan's gifts." He looked at her, and saw the same glow surrounding her body, brighter around her chest and head, pulsing with a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. "This is..." He didn't have words. "This is incredible." "There's more." She reached into a pouch at her belt and pulled out a small mirror, handing it to him. "Look at your eyes." Sanji raised the mirror. And froze. His eyes, his familiar blue eyes, the ones he'd had his whole life, were gone. In their place were something else entirely. Crimson irises, deep as blood, with 3 black commas arranged around the pupil. They moved as he watched, the commas spinning slowly, hypnotically, like wheels turning in the dark. "The Sharingan," he whispered. 3 Tomo. Miko's voice held something like awe. fully manifested, right from the start. That shouldn't be possible. Even the strongest Uchiha take years to reach this level. Sanji stared at himself in the mirror. At the stranger wearing his face. At the eyes that weren't his eyes, looking back at him with knowledge he didn't possess. Who am I now? He asked. Miko was quiet for a long moment. That's what we're going to find out. A year passed. Sanji spent it in the land of waves, hidden away in Miko's small house at the edge of the mangroves. He trained. He learned. He grew. The chakra was the hardest part. In his world, he'd had his own kind of energy, the physical stamina that let him fight for hours, the willpower that pushed him beyond his limits, the passion that fueled his flames. But chakra was different. Chakra was everything, physical energy and spiritual energy mixed together, flowing through pathways in his body he'd never known existed. Miko taught him to feel it, to control it, to shape it into techniques he'd only dreamed of. The fire release came naturally. Uchiha are known for their fire, Miko explained during one of their early training sessions. It's in our blood. Our heritage. When you channel chakra through your lungs and release it, the flames respond to your will. Sanji tried it for the first time on a cold morning by the river. He formed the hand seal she'd shown him. Tiger, she called it, though it looked nothing like a tiger to him, and felt chakra build in his chest. It was warm at first, then hot, then burning, filling his lungs with a pressure that demanded release. He opened his mouth. And fire poured out. Not the small flames he'd created with his diable jam, but a torrent of it, a river of orange and red that roared across the water and set the far bank ablaze. He cut it off immediately, gasping, his chest heaving with the effort. Miko stood beside him, watching the flames die down. That was... She paused, searching for the right word. Impressive. Most Uchiha spend years mastering the great fireball. You did it on your first try. Sanji shook his head, still catching his breath. I've been using fire for years. In my kicks. My fighting style. This is just different. Different how? He thought about it. About the way his diable jam worked, spinning faster, generating friction, igniting his leg through sheer physical force. About the way this new fire felt, like it came from inside, from his very soul, rather than from motion and speed. More controlled, he finally said. More me? Like the fire is part of me, instead of something I create. Miko nodded slowly. That's the Uchiha blood. Fire isn't just a technique for us, it's an inheritance. A birthright. The Sharingan was harder to master. It showed him so much, too much sometimes. The flow of chakra in living things. The subtle movements of muscles before they moved. The faint afterimages of techniques, hanging in the air like ghosts. But all that information came at a cost. It overwhelmed him. Drowned him. Made his head pound and his eyes ache until he thought they might bleed. Rest, Miko told him, again and again. You're pushing too hard. The Sharingan takes time to master. I don't have time. He was pacing the small room, unable to sit still. My crew is out there. They need me. I need to find a way back. You don't even know if a way back exists. Then I'll make one. He said it with such certainty that Miko fell silent. Watched him with those old, sad eyes that had seen too much. You really love them, she said. Your crew. They're my family. He stopped pacing, met her gaze. I know that probably sounds stupid to you. We're not related by blood. We didn't grow up together. But they're the only family I've ever had that actually wanted me. Miko's expression softened, just slightly. It doesn't sound stupid. It sounds like something my father would have said about his brother. Before everything went wrong. Sanji wanted to ask more, about Madara, about the Uchiha, about the history that weighed so heavily on this world, but he could see the pain in her eyes. The loss. So instead, he just nodded. Tell me about the Mangekyo. The eternal Mangekyo, she explained, was the ultimate form of the Sharingan. It could only be achieved by transplanting the eyes of a close blood relative, a brother, a sister, a parent, after both had achieved the Mangekyo on their own. The result was a Sharingan that never degraded, never lost its power, never went blind. That's what my father had, Miko said. He took his brother's eyes after Izuna died. Combined them with his own. Created something that had never existed before. And now I have them. Yes. She looked at him strangely. I don't know what that means. No one does. You're not an Uchiha, not fully anyway. But you carry Madara's eyes. His power. His legacy. Sanji thought about that. About the weight of carrying a dead man's eyes. About the responsibility that came with such a gift. Then I'll use them, he said. I'll use them to protect the people I love. That's what he would have wanted, right? For his power to protect someone? Miko was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, she smiled. It was the first time he'd seen her smile. Yes, she said. I think he would have wanted that. By the end of the year, Sanji had transformed. His fighting style had evolved into something new, something that combined the best of both worlds. He still used his kicks, still relied on the speed and power that Seth had drilled into him during those long years on the Baratai. But now his legs burned with chakra-infused flames, blue instead of yellow, hot enough to melt steel. He called it Diable Mangekyo. The Sharingan let him see everything, every movement, every technique, every weakness. He could copy the jutsu of any opponent he faced, could predict their attacks before they made them, could slip into their minds with genjutsu, and make them see things that weren't there. The fire release techniques came naturally, but he pushed them further than any Uchiha had before. Combined them with his physical style. Created hybrid attacks that Miko had never seen. Flame Kick, Phoenix Blossom. A spinning attack that scattered burning embers in every direction, blinding enemies while he closed in for the kill. Sharingan Flame Mirror. A genjutsu that reflected an opponent's own fire back at them, making them believe they were being consumed by their own flames. Diable Mangekyo, Sunrise. His ultimate technique, a kick so fast and so hot that it left a trail of fire in the air, like a blade of light cutting through the darkness. Miko watched him train one evening, as the sun set over the mangroves and painted the sky in shades of orange and red. You're ready, she said. Sanji lowered his leg, the blue flames dying down. Ready for what? To leave. To find your crew. To become what you were always meant to be. He looked at her. At the woman who had saved his life, given him eyes, trained him in ways he'd never imagined. At the daughter of Madara Uchiha, hiding in the shadows of a world that had forgotten her. Come with me. She blinked. What? Come with me. To Konoha. To wherever my crew is. You don't belong here any more than I do. A long pause. Then she shook her head. I can't. My place is here. Guarding my father's legacy. Making sure his eyes don't fall into the wrong hands. They're my eyes now. He said it gently, without accusation. And I'm asking you to come with me. Something flickered in her gaze. Hope? Fear? He couldn't tell. I'll think about it. It wasn't yes. But it wasn't no either. Sanji nodded. That's all I ask? They left the land of waves together 3 days later. Miko had packed lightly, a few supplies, some scrolls, the clothes on her back. She wore her hair loose now, instead of pulled back, and Sanji noticed that it made her look younger. Softer. Less like the weight of the world was pressing down on her shoulders. You didn't have to come, he said as they walked toward the main road. I know. But you did anyway. She glanced at him. Someone has to make sure you don't get yourself killed. The Uchiha aren't exactly welcoming to outsiders. Without me to vouch for you, you'd be dead before you reached the village gates. Sanji smiled around his cigarette, real tobacco, finally, after a year without. So you're my bodyguard? Something like that. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the road stretching out before them. Sanji's new eyes took in everything, the chakra of the trees, the animals in the underbrush, the distant glow of a village somewhere ahead. Tell me about Konoha, he said. Miko was quiet for a moment. Then, it's beautiful. The leaves are always green, always moving. The Hokage monument looks over everything, the faces of the men who built the village, carved into the mountain. There's a river that runs through it, and markets, and training grounds, and the academy where children learn to become shinobi. Sounds peaceful. It was. Once. Her voice hardened. Before the Uchiha were pushed to the edges. Before my father was made into a monster. Before Danzo and his root began poisoning everything from the shadows. Danzo? A man who believes the ends justify the means. Who's willing to sacrifice anyone and anything for what he calls the greater good. She spat the words like poison. He's dangerous. More dangerous than most people realize. If he finds out about you, about your eyes, he'll try to take them. Sanji's hand drifted unconsciously toward his face. Let him try. He won't fight you openly. That's not his style. He'll send shadows. Assassins. People you won't see coming until it's too late. Sounds like a coward. He's worse than a coward. He's a true believer. They walked on, the weight of her words settling between them. The attack came without warning. One moment the road was empty. The next, figures were erupting from the ground, men in dark armor, their faces hidden behind masks, weapons flashing in the afternoon light. IWA Shinobi, Sanji's Sharingan told him, reading the symbols on their forehead protectors. Earth release users. Ambush specialists. Miko moved first, her hands flying through seals. Fire release, great fireball. Flames roared toward the attackers, but they were already sinking into the earth, disappearing like ghosts. The fire passed over empty ground. Behind you! Sanji shouted. He spun, his leg already rising, and caught a blade with his shin. The impact jarred through him, but his bones held, stronger now, reinforced by chakra, by training, by the power flowing through his veins. The IWA Shinobi's eyes widened behind his mask. Sanji smiled. Wrong move. His leg ignited, blue flames roaring to life, and he pushed. The kick connected with the man's chest and sent him flying, his armor crumpling, his body bouncing across the ground like a skipped stone. More attackers emerged from the earth. 4, 5, a dozen. Sanji's Sharingan spun. He saw everything. Their chakra gathering in their limbs. Their muscles tensing for attacks not yet made. The techniques forming in their minds before their hands could shape the seals. There. A weakness in their formation. A gap between two of them, just large enough. Stay close, he told Miko. Then he moved. His kicks came faster than they could track, flaming arcs that left trails of blue fire in the air. He wasn't just attacking, he was flowing, moving from one target to the next with a grace that surprised even himself. The Sharingan guided him, showed him where to strike, when to pivot, how to turn each enemy's momentum against them. One man tried to use Earth Release, a wall of stone rising between them. Sanji's kick shattered it like glass. Another attempted a sneak attack from below, reaching up to grab his ankle. Sanji leapt, spun in midair, and brought his heel down on the man's head with enough force to leave a crater. The last two survivors looked at each other. Then at the blonde shinobi standing in the center of their fallen comrades, his legs smoking, his crimson eyes spinning with impossible power. Retreat! One of them screamed. They fled. Sanji let them go. When he turned back to Miko, she was staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. What? He asked. That was. She shook her head. That was like watching my father fight. The same movements. The same presence. For a moment I almost thought. She didn't finish the sentence. Sanji understood anyway. The boy was hiding behind a tree. Sanji had sensed him there during the fight, a small chakra signature, trembling with fear, but he'd been too focused on the attackers to investigate. Now, with the danger past, he approached carefully, his hands raised to show he meant no harm. It's okay, he called softly. They're gone. You can come out. A pause. Then a small face peered around the trunk. The boy couldn't have been more than 7 or 8. Dark hair, dark eyes, a smear of dirt across his cheek. He was shaking. Who are you? He whispered. My name's Sanji. He lowered himself to one knee, bringing himself to the boy's level. What's yours? Nawaki. A sniffle. I'm Nawaki. Well, Nawaki, it's nice to meet you. Are you hurt? The boy shook his head. Then, in a rush. They were going to take me. The bad men. They said I was worth something to someone, that my sister would pay. Sister? Nawaki nodded frantically. Tsunade. She's a really important ninja. The princess of the Senju. They said they could use me to get to her. Sanji's Sharingan caught something in the distance. More chakra signatures, approaching fast. Strong ones. Nawaki, he said carefully. Do you know anyone who might be looking for you right now? The boy's face lit up. Tsunade. And Gramps. And Jiraiya. They were supposed to be watching me, but I ran off and... He was cut off by a roar from the trees. Nawaki! A woman burst into the clearing, blonde hair, dark eyes, a strength in her frame that spoke of years of combat. Behind her came 2 men, one with white hair and a wild look, another with pale skin and eyes that reminded Sanji of snakes. The woman took in the scene in an instant. The fallen IWA shinobi. The boy, unharmed, standing beside a stranger with strange eyes. The stranger himself, blonde hair, a black suit, a cigarette dangling from his lips. "Who are you?" she demanded. "What did you do to my brother?" Before Sanji could answer, Miko stepped forward. "Tsunade." Her voice was calm, measured. "It's been a long time." The blonde woman, Tsunade, stared at her. Recognition flickered in her eyes. Then disbelief. "Miko?" She shook her head. "No. That's not possible. You died years ago. When the Uchiha." "I didn't die." Miko's voice was flat. "I disappeared. There's a difference." The white-haired man, Jiraiya, Sanji's Sharingan told him, the name rising from somewhere in his borrowed memories, stepped forward, his expression wary. "Tsunade, who is this?" "The daughter of Madara Uchiha." Tsunade's voice was tight. "Or so she claims." Every muscle in the clearing tensed. Sanji moved without thinking, placing himself between Miko and the three newcomers, his leg already beginning to heat. "Nobody's fighting today," he said quietly. "The boy's safe. The attackers are down. There's no reason for this to get ugly." Jiraiya's eyes narrowed. "And who are you?" Sanji met his gaze. His Sharingan spun. "My name's Sanji. And I'm the one who saved your friend's brother." The journey to Konoha took 3 days. Tsunade insisted on accompanying them, partly to ensure Nawaki's safety, partly to keep an eye on Miko and the mysterious stranger with Uchiha eyes. Jiraiya and Orochimaru followed at a distance, watching, analyzing, filing away information for later use. Sanji didn't mind. He had his own observations to make. Tsunade was strong, physically obviously, but also in the way she carried herself. There was a weight to her presence, a gravity that spoke of loss and survival and a kind of strength that came from enduring impossible things. She reminded him of Robin, in some ways. The same quiet competence. The same guarded eyes. Jiraiya was easier to read. A womanizer, obviously, Sanji recognized the type immediately. But there was intelligence beneath the lechery, a sharpness that suggested he was far more dangerous than he appeared. His chakra was immense, dwarfing anything Sanji had sensed so far. And Orochimaru. Orochimaru made Sanji's skin crawl. There was something wrong with him. Something that went beyond his pale skin and snake-like eyes. His chakra felt slippery somehow, like it was always moving, always shifting, never quite where it should be. And the way he looked at Sanji's eyes, made the cook want to shower. "Your Sharingan," Orochimaru said on the second night, appearing beside Sanji at the campfire without a sound. "It's remarkable. Fully developed, 3 tomo, and yet you're not Uchiha. How is that possible?" Sanji took a long drag of his cigarette. "None of your business." "Everything is my business." A thin smile. "Knowledge is power, after all. And I have to admit, I'm very curious about how a blonde foreigner came to possess the eyes of a dead clan. Maybe I killed an Uchiha and took them." "Unlikely. Your chakra doesn't match. It's too integrated. Too natural. Those eyes are part of you, not just implants." He leaned closer. "Fascinating." Sanji's Sharingan spun. "Back off," the movement said. "Back off or else." Orochimaru's smile widened. "Definitely fascinating." He drifted away into the darkness, leaving Sanji alone with his thoughts and the dying embers of the fire. Konoha rose from the forest like a dream. Sanji had seen many beautiful places in his travels: Water 7 with its canals, Skypiea with its clouds, the endless expanse of the Grand Line in all its terrible glory. But Konoha was different. It felt alive in a way that cities shouldn't. The trees moved with the wind. The buildings seemed to grow from the earth rather than being imposed upon it. And everywhere, there were people. Shinobi, Miko called them. Ninja. Warriors trained from birth to fight and kill and die for their village. Sanji watched them move through the streets and felt a strange kinship. These were people like him, people who had chosen a path of violence because they had no other choice. People who protected the ones they loved with the only skills they had. "Impressive, isn't it?" Jiraiya appeared at his elbow, pipe in hand. "First time I saw it, I couldn't believe a place like this could exist. A whole village dedicated to shinobi. To family." "Family." Sanji tasted the word. "Is that what you call it?" Jiraiya's eyes sharpened. "What do you mean?" "Nothing." Sanji shook his head. "Just back home, family means something different. It means people who choose each other. Not people who happen to share blood." For a moment, something flickered in Jiraiya's expression. Pain? Loss? It was gone before Sanji could read it. Maybe you're right, the older man said quietly. Maybe that's what family should be. The Uchiha district was at the edge of the village. Even from a distance, Sanji could feel it, a weight in the air, a tension that set his teeth on edge. The buildings here were older, more traditional, with curved roofs and paper screens and gardens that spoke of centuries of cultivation. But there was something else, too. Something that felt like watching. They know we're here, Miko murmured beside him. They've known since we entered the village. Good. Sanji kept walking. Let them watch. The gate to the district was guarded by 2 men in dark clothing, their eyes sharp, their hands resting on weapon hilts. They stepped forward as Sanji and Miko approached, blocking the way. State your business. Miko met their gaze calmly. I'm here to see the clan leader. Tell him Miko has returned. The guards exchanged glances. One of them disappeared through the gate, moving fast. They waited in silence. Fugaku Uchiha was not what Sanji expected. He'd imagined someone older, more weathered, a man who had seen generations of Uchiha rise and fall. But the person who greeted them in the clan's main hall was still in his prime, with dark hair and dark eyes and a presence that filled the room like smoke. So, Fugaku's voice was flat. Unreadable. The lost daughter returns. Miko bowed, a shallow gesture, barely respectful. Father. Sanji's eyebrows rose. Father? Fugaku's gaze shifted to him. Those dark eyes, Sharingan, Sanji realized, though currently deactivated, studied him with the intensity of a surgeon examining a specimen. And who is this? A guest. Miko's voice was careful. He carries Uchiha blood. Distant but real. I performed the ritual. Gave him my father's eyes. The room went very still. Fugaku's Sharingan activated, 3 tomos spinning, burning, seeing. Sanji felt the weight of that gaze like a physical pressure, pressing against his mind, his soul, his very existence. Madara's eyes. Fugaku breathed. You gave him Madara's eyes. He was blind. Dying. It was the only way to save him. And you didn't think to consult the clan first? There wasn't time. Fugaku was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to Sanji. Show me. Sanji met his gaze. Let his own Sharingan spin, Madara's Sharingan, eternal Mangekyo, power beyond anything this man had ever seen. Fugaku's eyes widened. Just slightly. Just for an instant. But Sanji saw it. I see, the clan leader said slowly. I see very clearly now. He turned away, walking toward a door at the back of the hall. Come. There's something you need to understand. The training ground was hidden behind the main hall, a clearing surrounded by trees, the earth scarred by years of combat. Fugaku led them to its center and turned to face Sanji. The Uchiha don't accept outsiders lightly. Even those who carry our blood. Even those who carry our eyes. He settled into a stance, his hands loose at his sides. If you want to be recognized by this clan, you'll have to prove yourself. Sanji sighed. Removed his cigarette. Ground it out beneath his heel. A fight. A test. Fugaku's Sharingan spun faster. Show me what you can do with Madara's eyes. Show me that you're worthy of them. Sanji looked at Miko. She nodded, just once, barely perceptible. He turned back to Fugaku. Fine. But when I win, you answer my questions. All of them. Fugaku's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. Agreed. They circled each other in the fading light. Sanji's Sharingan took in everything, the way Fugaku's chakra gathered in his legs, the slight tension in his shoulders, the tiny movements that preceded every attack. He was good. Better than anyone Sanji had faced in this world so far. But Sanji had faced better. Fire release, great fireball. The flames roared toward him, a massive orb of destruction that would have consumed a lesser opponent. Sanji's Sharingan tracked its trajectory, calculated its speed, found the gaps in its formation. He moved. Not away from the flames, but through them. His leg ignited, blue fire meeting orange, and he emerged on the other side with his suit barely singed. Fugaku's eyes widened. Then Sanji was on him. His kicks came fast and furious, a storm of blows that forced Fugaku to defend, to retreat, to give ground he clearly wasn't used to giving. The clan leader's Sharingan tracked each attack, predicted each movement, but prediction and reaction were different things. Sanji was fast. Faster than anyone with eyes like his had a right to be. He's not using his full power, Sanji realized. He's testing me. Feeling me out. Time to change that. Diable Mangekyo. His leg blazed brighter, blue flames turning white at the edges, heat so intense that the air around him shimmered. He spun, gathered himself, and kicked. The technique didn't have a name yet. It was something he'd been developing in secret, something he'd never shown anyone, not even Miko. A combination of his fastest kick and his hottest flame, compressed into a single point and released with the full force of his spinning momentum. It hit Fugaku's guard like a meteor. The clan leader flew backward, tumbling across the training ground, and came to rest against a tree at the far edge. For a long moment, he didn't move. Sanji lowered his leg. Waited. Slowly, Fugaku pushed himself to his feet. His clothing was scorched, his face flushed, but he was smiling. Smiling. Madara, he said quietly. You move like Madara. Sanji shook his head. I move like myself. No. Fugaku walked toward him, ignoring his wounds. I've studied the histories. The techniques. The legends. That kick, that spinning attack, it's the same one Madara used against the first Hokage at the Valley of the End. The same movement. The same fire. Sanji stared at him. That's impossible. I've never seen Madara fight. I've never even seen this world until a year ago. Impossible or not, it's true. Fugaku reached him and stopped, close enough to touch. The eyes carry memories, boy. Memories of the one who wielded them before. You're not just using Madara's power, you're channeling his soul. The meeting lasted until dawn. Fugaku asked questions, endless questions, about Sanji's world, his crew, his training, his techniques. He wanted to know everything. And Sanji, exhausted from the fight and still reeling from Fugaku's revelation, answered as honestly as he could. When he finally finished, the clan leader was quiet for a long moment. You're dangerous, Fugaku finally said. More dangerous than you know. The combination of your natural abilities and Madara's eyes, it's unprecedented. There's never been anything like you. Is that a problem? It could be. Fugaku's expression was unreadable. The village is already suspicious of the Uchiha. Already watching us, waiting for us to step out of line. If they learn that we've acquired a new warrior, one with Madara's eyes, no less, the consequences could be severe. So you want me to leave? No. The word was firm. Final. I want you to stay. I want you to train with us. Learn from us. Become what Madara's eyes were meant to become. He leaned forward. But I want you to do it quietly. In the shadows. Where Danzo and his spies can't see. Sanji thought about it. About Luffy and the crew, still out there somewhere, waiting for him. About his promise to find the All Blue and become the greatest chef in the world. But he also thought about this world. About the people in it. About Miko, who had saved his life and asked for nothing in return. How long? He asked. Fugaku shook his head. I don't know. Months. Years. However long it takes. And if I say no? Then you're free to go. The Uchiha won't stop you. A pause. But you'll never understand what you've become. And you'll never be able to fully control the power in your eyes. Sanji looked at Miko. She met his gaze steadily, her expression giving nothing away. What do you think? He asked her. I think, she said slowly, that my father's eyes deserve to be used for something more than survival. I think you owe it to yourself, and to him, to become what you were meant to be. And what's that? I don't know yet. But I want to find out. Sanji turned back to Fugaku. Fine. I'll stay. But on one condition. Name it. When I find a way back to my world, when I find my crew, you won't stop me from leaving. Fugaku nodded slowly. Agreed. The training that followed was unlike anything Sanji had experienced. The Uchiha were brutal taskmasters. They pushed him harder than Zeph ever had, harder than any opponent in the Grand Line. They tested his limits, broke him down, rebuilt him from the ground up. And through it all, his Sharingan grew. The Eternal Mangekyo was different from a normal Sharingan. Miko had warned him about that. It didn't tire. Didn't degrade. Didn't lose power no matter how much he used it. But it also demanded more from him. More chakra. More focus. More presence. He learned to use it in combat, not just as a tool, but as an extension of himself. He learned to cast genjutsu so subtle that his opponents didn't realize they were trapped until it was too late. He learned to read chakra so precisely that he could predict techniques before they were formed. And he learned about fire. The Uchiha were masters of fire release, and they taught him everything they knew. Great Fireball, Phoenix Flower, Dragon Flame. Technique after technique, each more powerful than the last, each building on the foundation he'd already established. But Sanji didn't just learn their techniques. He adapted them, combined them with his own style, created something new. The Uchiha watched in amazement as he performed a spinning kick that launched fire in every direction, a technique they'd never seen, never imagined. "He's not just learning," one of them whispered. "He's creating." Months passed. Sanji became a familiar sight in the Uchiha district, the blonde stranger with the crimson eyes, always training, always pushing, always moving. The clan members grew used to him, then fond of him, then fiercely protective. He was one of them now, in all the ways that mattered. But outside the district, tensions were rising. Danzo Shimura had learned of the stranger with Uchiha eyes. His spies reported everything, every movement, every training session, every conversation. And he was interested. "The eyes of Madara," he murmured, studying the reports in his underground office. "In the head of a foreigner. How useful." Route operatives were dispatched. Watchers posted. Plans made. The Uchiha, for their part, grew increasingly isolated. Fugaku withdrew the clan from village affairs, citing ancient privileges and rights that predated the founding of Konoha itself. The other villagers noticed, whispered, wondered what the Uchiha were hiding. And through it all, Sanji trained. Miko came to him one evening, as the sun set over the district. "You've changed," she said quietly. Sanji looked up from his meditation. "Have I?" "You know you have." She sat beside him on the training ground's wooden platform. "When I first found you, you were broken. Lost. A man without a world. Now you're something else. Something more." She was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about what you said. About your crew. Your family. And I think I understand now. Why you fight so hard. Why you push yourself so relentlessly." She met his gaze. "You're not just training for yourself. You're training for them. So that when you find them, when you find a way back, you'll be strong enough to protect them." Sanji didn't deny it. "You're right," he said. "They're out there somewhere. Waiting for me. And when I find them, I need to be ready for whatever comes." Miko nodded slowly. "I want to help." "You already are." "No." She shook her head. "I want to help you find them. I want to search for a way back to your world. I have resources, contacts, information, things my father left behind. If there's a way, I'll find it." Sanji stared at her. "Why?" "Because," she hesitated. "Because you're the first person in years who's made me feel like I'm not alone. Because you remind me of what my father could have been, if things had been different. Because..." She trailed off, unable to finish. Sanji understood anyway. "Thank you," he said quietly. Miko nodded. And for a moment, in the fading light, they sat together in silence. The document changed everything. Miko produced it at a meeting of the village elders, an ancient decree, signed by the first Hokage himself, granting the Uchiha clan certain autonomous rights within Konoha's borders. It was old, brittle, but unquestionably authentic. And it gave the clan the legal authority to withdraw from village affairs whenever they deemed it necessary. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, studied the document with a heavy heart. "This is real," he said quietly. "I remember my teacher speaking of it. A concession made to Madara, to convince him to join the village." "Madara is dead," Danzo said sharply. "The concession died with him." "The document doesn't say that." Miko's voice was calm. "It says the rights belong to the clan in perpetuity. Not to Madara. To the Uchiha." Danzo's eye narrowed. "You're making a mistake, girl. Withdrawing from the village won't protect you. It'll only make you a target." "We're already a target." Miko met his gaze without flinching. "At least this way, we choose our own ground." The meeting dissolved into arguments after that. But the document held. And in the weeks that followed, the Uchiha slowly, quietly, began to pull back from Konoha's public life. Sanji watched it all from the district, his Sharingan tracking the movements of route operatives and village spies. "They're watching us," he told Fugaku one evening. "Dozens of them. Circling like sharks." "I know." Fugaku's expression was grim. "Danzo wants our eyes. He's always wanted our eyes. This just gives him an excuse to try and take them. Then we fight." "No." The clan leader shook his head. "Not yet. If we fight now, we lose. The village will unite against us, and we'll be destroyed. We need to wait. Need to be patient. Sanji wanted to argue. Wanted to point out that patience had never been his strong suit, that waiting for enemies to strike first was a recipe for disaster. But he understood strategy. Understood that sometimes the best move was no move at all. What do you need from me? He asked. Fugaka studied him for a long moment. Train. Get stronger. Become the weapon we'll need when the time comes. He paused. And stay away from the village. If Danzo gets his hands on you, on your eyes, everything we're working for will be lost. Sanji nodded. I understand. He threw himself into training with renewed intensity. The techniques came faster now. Fire release jutsu that would have taken years to master, mastered in months. Genjutsu that would have trapped lesser opponents for hours, broken in minutes. Physical conditioning that pushed his body to its absolute limits, and beyond. And through it all, his Sharingan spun. The eternal Mangekyo showed him things he'd never seen before. Patterns in chakra flow. Weak points and techniques. The fundamental nature of fire itself, not as destruction, but as transformation. As change. As the endless cycle of burning and rebirth that governed all things. He thought about his crew. About Luffy, who burned with the fire of ambition. About Zoro, who burned with the fire of pride. About Nami and Robin and Chopper and all the others, each burning with their own unique flame. I'll find you, he promised them, wherever they were. I'll find you, and I'll protect you. No matter what it takes. Jiraiya came to the district 3 months later. He came alone, unarmed, his hands raised in peace. The Uchiha guards let him pass, grudgingly, suspiciously, and escorted him to the main hall where Fugaka waited. I'm not here to fight, Jiraiya said, settling onto a cushion with a grunt. I'm here to talk. Talk about what? About the blonde kid with Madara's eyes. Jiraiya's expression was serious. About what's going to happen when Danzo decides he can't wait anymore. Fugaka's jaw tightened. You know something. I know Danzo. I know how he thinks. And I know that he's been meeting with root commanders every night for the past week, planning something. Jiraiya leaned forward. He's going to move against you. Soon. And when he does, it won't be just root. It'll be the village. The Hokage. Everyone. Why are you telling me this? Jiraiya was quiet for a moment. Because I've seen what happens when villages turn against their own. When fear and suspicion win. And I don't want to see it happen again. Fugaka studied him with those dark eyes. You're talking about the Uzumaki. I'm talking about all of it. Jiraiya stood. I can't stop Danzo. I can't stop what's coming. But I can warn you. Give you time to prepare. He paused at the door. Use it wisely. He left without waiting for a response. The district prepared for war. Not openly, that would have been suicide. But quietly, carefully, the Uchiha began stockpiling weapons and supplies. Reinforcing their defenses. Training their warriors for the conflict they knew was coming. Sanji trained with them, harder than ever. His flames burned brighter now, blue-white, almost invisible in direct sunlight. His kicks moved faster than the eye could follow. His Sharingan saw everything, anticipated everything, knew everything. But it wasn't enough. He could feel it, in the spaces between heartbeats. The war that was coming would be unlike anything he'd faced before. Not a fight against pirates or marines, but a fight against shadows. Against enemies who would strike from darkness and vanish before they could be countered. He needed something more. Something new. And late one night, alone on the training ground, he found it. The technique came to him in a moment of perfect clarity. He'd been meditating, something Miko had taught him, a way of quieting his mind and letting his Sharingan show him what it saw, when the vision came. Madara, standing on a battlefield, surrounded by enemies. His eyes blazing with power. His hands forming seals that Sanji had never seen before. And then fire. Not ordinary fire. Not even the black flames of Amaterasu. Something else. Something older. Flames that burn not with heat, but with meaning. With memory. With the accumulated weight of every Uchiha who had ever lived and died. Diable Mangekyo, eternal flame. Sanji opened his eyes. The technique was his now. Imprinted on his soul by Madara's eyes, unlocked by his own desperate need. He didn't know what it did, not yet, but he could feel its power waiting within him. Waiting to be used. Soon, he promised himself. Soon. Minato Namikaze was not a man who startled easily. The yellow flash of Konoha had faced down enemies that would have broken lesser shinobi, IWA armies, Kumo assassins, even a rampaging tailed beast. He'd earned his reputation through skill and speed and an unshakable calm that never deserted him, no matter how dire the situation. But when he entered the Uchiha district and saw the blonde stranger training, he stopped dead. The man moved like nothing Minato had ever seen. His kicks created shockwaves of fire chakra that scorched the earth and split the air. His eyes, crimson eyes spinning with the unmistakable pattern of the Mangekyo, tracked movements that hadn't happened yet. And his presence. His presence was wrong. Not evil, exactly. Not hostile. But wrong in the same way that a storm was wrong, beautiful and terrible and completely outside human control. Who is that? Minato asked the guard who had escorted him. The guard hesitated. A guest. Of the clan. A guest with Mangekyo's Sharingan? He's special. Minato watched for another moment. Then he walked forward, ignoring the guard's protests. Sanji sensed him before he saw him. The chakra was immense, far larger than Jiraiya's, larger even than the Hokage's, if the rumors were true. It moved with a speed that bordered on teleportation, appearing and disappearing and reappearing in ways that defied logic. When Sanji finally turned to face the newcomer, he found a young man with blonde hair and blue eyes watching him calmly from the edge of the training ground. Minato Namikaze. The man offered a friendly smile. Sorry to interrupt. I was in the neighborhood and couldn't resist seeing what all the fuss was about. Sanji's Sharingan spun, analyzing, cataloging. The chakra was even more impressive up close, dense and bright and somehow fast, like it was always on the verge of moving. Sanji. He didn't offer his hand. Are you here to fight? God, no. Minato laughed. I'm here to talk. The Hokage asked me to check on the Uchiha situation. Make sure things aren't as bad as they seem. And what do they seem? Pretty bad, honestly. Minato's smile faded. The village is tense. People are nervous. Danzo's been whispering in ears, spreading rumors about Uchiha conspiracies and secret plans. He met Sanji's gaze. I wanted to see for myself what's really going on. Sanji studied him for a long moment. There was something genuine in this man's eyes, something that reminded him of Luffy, actually. The same refusal to accept things at face value. The same drive to understand before judging. Why do you care? Sanji asked. Minato shrugged. Because I'm a shinobi of Konoha. Because I took an oath to protect this village and everyone in it. Because... He paused, searching for words. Because I think the Uchiha have been treated unfairly. Pushed aside. Made into scapegoats for problems they didn't create. And you think you can change that? I think I can try. Minato smiled again. That's all any of us can do, right? Try. Sanji found himself smiling back, just slightly, just for a moment. You're different, he said, from the other shinobi I've met. I'll take that as a compliment. Minato stepped forward, extending his hand. Look, I know we just met. I know you have no reason to trust me. But if there's anything I can do, anything at all, to help bridge the gap between the Uchiha and the village, I want to try. Will you let me? Sanji looked at the offered hand. Thought about everything Miko had told him, about Danzo's schemes, about the village's suspicion, about the long history of betrayal that had shaped the Uchiha into what they were. Then he thought about what Jiraiya had said, about villages turning against their own, about the cost of fear and suspicion. He took Minato's hand. Talk to Fugaku, he said. He's the one you need to convince. Minato nodded. I will. They talked for hours after that, not about politics or war, but about simpler things. About training. About techniques. About the strange kinship that sometimes formed between warriors who recognized something of themselves in each other. Minato was fascinated by Sanji's fighting style. Kicks only, he murmured, watching Sanji demonstrate. No weapons. No hand-to-hand. That's unusual. My hands are for cooking. Sanji shrugged. Always have been. Zeph taught me that. A chef's hands are his most valuable tools. I'd rather break my legs than risk damaging them. Zeph? My teacher. The man who raised me. Sanji's expression softened. He's a pirate. Well, retired pirate. Runs a restaurant now. Minato's eyebrows rose. Pirate? I've heard stories about pirates from distant lands, but I thought they were just legends. They're real in my world. Sanji hesitated. You believe me? That I'm from another world? Minato considered the question seriously. I've seen a lot of strange things in my life. Summoning techniques that bring creatures from other dimensions. Space-time ninjutsu that bend reality. If you told me you're from another world. He shrugged. Why not? Stranger things have happened. Sanji laughed, a real laugh, the first in a long time. You really are different. So I've been told. When Minato finally left, he carried something with him that he hadn't had before. Not information, exactly. Not intelligence. Something more valuable. Hope. The blonde stranger, Sanji, wasn't what he'd expected. Not a weapon. Not a threat. Just a man, trying to find his way home. A man who had been given incredible power and was doing his best to use it responsibly. Minato thought about that as he walked through the dark streets of Konoha. Thought about what it meant. What it could mean. Maybe there's still time, he told himself. Maybe we can still fix this. But even as he thought it, he knew it wasn't true. The wheels were already in motion. Danzo had made his plans. The village had made its choices. And the Uchiha. The Uchiha had found a new champion. A champion with Madara's eyes. The night was quiet. Too quiet. Sanji stood on the roof of the main hall, his Sharingan sweeping the darkness. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his bones, in the way the chakra of the district had shifted, subtle changes, almost imperceptible, but there. Movement in the shadows. He was moving before he consciously decided to, his body responding to threats his mind hadn't yet processed. His leg swept out, catching a rude operative mid-strike, sending him tumbling across the roof tiles. Then another. And another. And another. They came from everywhere, dozens of them, masked and armed, their chakra suppressed so thoroughly that even his Sharingan had trouble tracking them. Danzo's assassins. Moving against the Uchiha at last. Sanji's flames ignited. Diable Mangekyo! Blue fire erupted around him, driving back the first wave of attackers. But more were coming. Always more. Pouring into the district from every direction, overwhelming the Uchiha guards, cutting down everyone in their path. No. Sanji leapt from the roof, landing in the middle of a group of assassins. His kicks came faster than they could react, flaming arcs that left trails of fire in the air, each one finding its target with perfect precision. He moved like a storm, like a hurricane, like the wrath of God made manifest. But it wasn't enough. There were too many. The Uchiha were falling, one by one, their Sharingan no match for the coordinated assault. Sanji could see them dying, could see their chakra flickering out like candles in the wind, and there was nothing he could do. Miko. He spun, searching for her chakra. Found it near the main hall, surrounded by enemies. Fighting desperately. He ran. She was holding her own when he arrived, barely. Her fire release techniques kept the assassins at bay, but they were wearing her down, circling like wolves around a wounded deer. One of her arms hung limp at her side, blood dripping from her fingers. Miko! She turned at his voice, and for a moment, just a moment, he saw relief in her eyes. Then an assassin appeared behind her, blade raised. Sanji moved. He never moved faster. His leg extended, his flame ignited, his Sharingan tracked every millimeter of the blade's trajectory. He was too far away. He knew he was too far away. But he moved anyway, because moving was all he could do, because failing wasn't an option, because she mattered. The kick connected with the assassin's chest an instant before the blade would have pierced her spine. The man flew backward, his ribs shattering, his body crumpling against the wall. Sanji landed beside Miko, breathing hard. Are you okay? She nodded, wincing. I'll live. But Sanji, look. He looked. The district was burning. Uchiha were dying. And in the distance, he could see more assassins pouring through the gates, endless and merciless. This is wrong, he said quietly. This is so wrong. I know. Miko's voice was raw. But we can't stop it. There are too many. Sanji thought about running. About grabbing Miko and fleeing into the night, leaving this doomed place behind. It would be easy. It would be safe. But then he thought about the Uchiha who had trained him. Who had accepted him. Who had treated him like family, even though he was a stranger from another world. He thought about Fugaku, fighting somewhere in the darkness. He thought about the children, hiding in their homes. He thought about Madara's eyes, and what they represented. What they demanded. No. Miko stared at him. Sanji. I won't run. His voice was calm. Certain. I can't. These people are my family now. And I don't abandon family. He stepped forward, away from her, toward the battle. Sanji! He turned back, just once. If I don't make it, he said, tell my crew I love them. Tell them I'm sorry I couldn't come home. Then he faced the enemy. And he burned. The technique rose from somewhere deep within him, from the eyes, from the blood, from the accumulated legacy of every Uchiha who had ever lived. Diable Mangekyo, eternal flame. It wasn't destruction, he realized. It wasn't even really fire. It was memory. The flames that erupted from him weren't hot, not in the way ordinary fire was hot. They burned with something else. Something older. Something that reached into the souls of the assassins and showed them everything they tried to forget. Every sin. Every betrayal. Every moment of shame and regret they buried deep in their hearts. The root operatives screamed. They dropped their weapons, clawing at their faces, at their minds, at the memories that consumed them. Some fled. Some collapsed. Some simply stood there, weeping, as the weight of their crimes crushed them from within. Sanji walked through them like a ghost. His flames spread outward, touching everything, showing everything. The district burned with memory, with the accumulated history of the Uchiha, with the love and loss and longing of generations. And in that light, the assassins' darkness had nowhere to hide. One by one they fell. By the time the sun rose, the attack was over. The Uchiha gathered in the main hall, survivors counted, wounds tended. The losses were heavy, more than half the clan, gone in a single night. But they had held. They had survived. And they had Sanji to thank. Fugaku approached him as the sun climbed over the horizon, painting the ruined district in shades of gold. You saved us, the clan leader said quietly. You saved all of us. Sanji shook his head. I couldn't save everyone. No. But you saved enough. Fugaku paused. The village will have to respond to this. Danzo can't hide what happened, there are too many witnesses, too much evidence. The Hokage will be forced to act. And then? Then. Fugaku looked toward the Hokage monument, visible in the distance. Then we rebuild. We heal. We remember. He turned back to Sanji. And we honor the man who stood with us when it mattered most. Sanji met his gaze. I'm not Uchiha, he said. Not really. You're more Uchiha than most who carry the name. Fugaku's voice was firm. You have the eyes. The blood. The heart. That's all that matters. Sanji was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled. The blonde Uchiha, he said. That's what they're calling me, isn't it? Fugaku nodded. The name suits you. Maybe. Sanji looked toward the horizon, toward the world beyond Konoha, beyond this strange dimension, beyond everything he'd known. But I'm still a cook. Still a pirate. Still a man looking for his family. And when you find them? Sanji thought about it. About the crew. About the All Blue. About all the things he'd left behind. When I find them, he said quietly, I'll tell them about this place. About the Uchiha. About the family I found in another world. He turned back to Fugaku, his Sharingan spinning gently in the morning light. But until then, I'm yours. Fugaku nodded. And in the ruins of the Uchiha district, surrounded by the ashes of the night's horror, a new legend began to take shape. The legend of the blonde Uchiha.